Hello,
I'm Ryan,
and I'm Zach.
and together we are
Functionally
Literate.
That's right.
Christmas edition.
It's the Christmas edition.
Today we are discussing a very Christmassy book, Hogfather.
It's actually very explicitly not Christmas.
Nah, this is the Discworld's version of Christmas, Hog's Watch Night. I will note if you hear a little bit of an echo, that is because we are recording in Zach's basement. So
Yes.
there's a little bit of that. Apologies.
You may also intermittently hear dogs or cats whining.
Or children
Children
crying.
Children also whining. My wife sternly reminding me of the time.
Still haven't met your wife.
She's very shy.
In the same house. Still
She's
haven't met
a bit of a recluse.
her. Okay. One day.
One
maybe.
day.
Anyways, we're going to talk about Hogfather today.
It was so good.
This is going to be just one episode. So
Just real condensed.
Yeah. So I think we should start with a spoiler-free explanation of what this book is.
Okay.
So the best way I feel to describe this book is the Discworld's version of Santa Claus, the Hogfather. He's like an orc, right?
Yeah, it kind of just looks like a guy, but with tusks.
Yeah, he looks like Santa, but with tusks.
Yeah.
He gets assassinated. And so Death can't abide this, and he decides to take the Hogfather's place for a night.
Yeah.
And then his granddaughter Susan gets involved. She's like, why the hell is he doing this? I need to figure this out. This is absurd. The Hogfather should be doing this. He intentionally doesn't tell her anything because he knows that she'll investigate.
Right.
If he doesn't tell her anything.
Yeah.
And that was on purpose.
Yes.
And it's so funny.
It reminds me of like a higher brow. That sounds a little insulting. I don't mean it to be. A higher brow Nightmare Before Christmas.
Yeah.
Because, and I say higher brow in that Nightmare Before Christmas is kind of a children's movie.
Sure.
It's a little spooky for younger kids. But I don't mean to put down Tim Burton or The Nightmare Before Christmas. It's a fantastic film.
Wonderful
I love it.
film.
But this is more philosophical, more nuanced, more adult.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think maybe if you're like 10 or older, you might get some appreciation out of it.
Yeah.
But I mean, like much younger than that, and it's probably a lot of the nuance is going to be lost on you.
We're reading Christmas books.
Yeah.
I read out loud. I try to every night.
Yeah.
Just have a book. We'll all sit in the living room and I'll just read something out loud. We just finished The Nutcracker a couple of nights ago.
Okay.
And the next book, I was like, well, I got to refresh my memory of the Hogfather. So I was like, this is what we're reading now. I got about halfway through as of last night. And Victor is pretty nonplussed about the whole thing.
He's a toddler.
Right. He's not even 2. So he's just like, Dad's reading, playing with toys, whatever.
Yeah.
Mary appreciated it more than I expected.
Okay.
Because she hates British humor.
Okay.
She is not a fan, like Monty Python.
Yeah.
She's like, it's the dumbest thing I've ever seen. It doesn't matter what Monty Python you're talking about. She does not enjoy it.
So she doesn't like The Meaning of Life.
No.
She doesn't like The Holy Grail.
Mm-mm.
She doesn't like any of that.
She doesn't like Life of Brian. She likes Life of Brian more than the others because the story is more personal to her because she grew up Catholic. So she's like, oh, these are funny things. She gets more of the jokes, I think.
Right.
Because it's a material she's familiar with.
Sure.
But I was reading this, and there were actual moments where she's like, all right, now that was funny.
That's funny.
But, I mean, at the end, she was like, I don't know. I just think he's a British guy. I'm an American woman. We're not going to see eye to eye on these jokes. And I was like, well, I think he's super hilarious.
So I'm going to get some stuff out of the way before we move on to full-on spoiler territory. So this is still safe territory if you've not read this book and you don't want us to spoil it for you. Because this book came out, fun fact, this book came out in 1996. This book came out the year I was born.
Really? I didn't know it was that old.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I could have checked, but
the spine of the book, the copy of the book we have anyways, has little sides with candy cane handles and a little bow.
It's a fun little addition.
Yeah.
I like those.
Yeah.
I imagine this is what the Death of Rats is carrying.
Oh my god, the Death of Rats. Oh my god, so
cute.
So there are so many books in the Discworld series that it's actually just broken up into regular sized book series, right? So this is the 4th book in the Death series. And so I've not read any of the other books in the Death series.
Neither have I.
I've just read this one. I got no idea what is up with the Death of Rats, but the Death of the Rats is so freaking funny.
I love the Death of Rats. And the Raven. The Raven is it's such good comedic relief.
Yeah.
Which is hard to do in a novel that's already full of comedy. Like there's funny parts throughout the whole thing.
Absolutely.
But then to have a character that stands out as the funny guy that's tough to do, and the Raven is so good.
My wife and I, when we were reading this, we were reading it while we were traveling to visit her family in Iowa. So it's a 6-hour drive. We had plenty of time to read. And so we would alternate, right? Like we would take turns as we drove. Whoever wasn't driving would read. And so when she was narrating the Death of Rats, she would do it exactly like she would do it with Death. So she would be like, squeak. Fucking die. It was so good because that's how we would narrate Death. You know, we would try and emulate like monotone. In the movies, just like ho ho ho.
Yeah,
you know,
just a deadpan, no emotion.
Yeah,
you're just like, am I doing it right? You know, you're not doing it right. I tried.
You're
like, okay,
I'm gonna keep trying.
You got to move on.
Some of my favorite bits was Death with his elf assistant Albert.
Yeah.
And Albert knows what's up. Albert knows how this all works.
Yeah.
And he has to explain to Death like every little thing, right? Like Death is he's wearing a suit, but he's very thin, and except for the belly, because of course he's got a pillow. Under
he's
there.
Like got to put the cushion in.
Yeah.
But Albert is also just like the old curmudgeon.
Yeah.
You know,
he's just there for the sherry.
Yeah, and he's just like, he's like, well, you know, when I was a kid, you were lucky if you got one of those little pink candies and some blood pudding. Kids these days, I don't know, they want everything. But you got to give it to you're the Hogfather. That's your job, you know.
All right, I think we're gonna now move on into the spoiler discussion. So, if you've not read this book and you'd like to, there are ways to do that. I let you guys know 2 weeks ago. I put it in the episode description and the mid-break and everything. I was like, hey, we're doing Hogfather, so get you a copy of the book. But if you're listening to this on Christmas Eve, there's probably a Barnes & Noble still open.
Probably.
Or you could get an ebook. Or,
the audiobook, download it.
Well, so...
How long is the audiobook?
Well, so that's the thing. I have a feeling the audiobook is a highly abridged version because it's only like 5 hours. So, I mean, you can listen to the audiobook.
I guess you could get through that in 5 hours.
You'd
be hard-pressed to. It'd be... How many pages is this?
I don't think...
400?
I don't think you can get through this in 5 hours because we only got maybe 2/3 of the way through it in 6 hours. I mean, admittedly, we were taking breaks from reading, but still.
402 pages? Yeah, that'd be hard to get through in 5 hours.
Yeah. So I don't know, because like when I was listening to the audiobook version, like I felt like there were bits that were being skipped over. Mm-hmm. Which, I mean, I could see that because there's like this whole plot with the university that you could arguably gloss over.
Oh, man. But Arch-Chancellor Ridcully
oh my God,
is my favorite character.
Yeah.
In the whole, like, just on the one hand, you're like, oh, this guy's a total idiot.
Yeah.
But then on the other hand, you're like, but everything he says makes sense given the idiocy that's around him.
Right.
You know, you're like, what a dumbass. But then these other wizards like say shit, and he responds. You go, "That's how I would have said that too." You know, like when they talk about Hex, the
computer,
the ant-driven computer.
Yeah,
and Ponder Stibbins is explaining to him like it doesn't really think, but it gives kind of the appearance of thinking. He goes, "So it doesn't actually think. There's no original thoughts." And he's like, "Nope." And he goes, "But it appears to be thinking." And he goes, "Yes." And he goes, "And it responds."
As though it was thinking.
In this imitation of intelligence to you. And he goes, yes. He goes, so it's just like everybody else. It's just like everybody else then. And it's like, oh, that is funny.
If you aren't able to get a copy of the book, at the very least, you should check out the film adaptation.
I want to watch that.
Yeah.
I think that may get added to our annual Christmas watch list.
Yeah.
Right now it's just Santa Claus with Tim Allen and It's a Wonderful Life. But we might add Hogfather.
I want one that you should add. I mean, maybe not because, you've got little kids. Violent Night with David Arbor in it.
Oh, I remember seeing the trailer for that. It looked really good.
It's Die Hard with Santa.
Yeah. I do want to watch that.
It's very fun, very violent, and
I
love it.
If it wasn't, it's really failing to fulfill the promise that the title makes.
It's true. It's true. Anyways, we're talking about Hogfather.
Yeah, Hogfather.
And we are now officially moving into spoiler discussion. So
we will say things that happen.
We will say things that happened. Have a Merry Christmas. Enjoy your time with your family or by yourself or like whatever.
Preferably with your family.
Whatever you're doing for Christmas that you love, we hope that you're doing that.
Yeah.
We hope you get lots of gifts. We hope you get lots of your favorite foods. We hope that you spend lots of time with your favorite people, and we will see you later.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Okay, now let's get into the meat of this story.
All right, spoiler stuff.
What favorite characters?
Oh, Arch-Chancellor Ridcully.
Yeah.
I think Tiadame, aka Tea Time, is such a good.
Is that how you say it? I was saying it like Tia Time.
He doesn't give like a real clear guide on how to pronounce it. He just sort of breaks up the syllables. But I've said Tiatame.
I literally just looked up how they said it in the movie.
Yeah.
Because I was just like, I have no idea how to say this. And I did just default to Tea Time a lot. Because,
no, I did. The only times, like when I was reading it out loud, the only times I said Tiatame was when he corrected
other people.
He's like, no, it's Tiatame. That's what I say. But other than that, I'm like, Mr. Tea Time.
Tea Time is such an interesting character, and I feel like Death explained him the best after he was dead. Because Susan was like, I don't understand this guy. And he's just like, he's just the kind of guy that would poke an anthill with a stick just to see what would happen.
Yeah, that's weird.
He just wanted to see what would happen if he did it. That's all. That's it. That's still, sometimes that's all people need. Is basically what he said about it.
Yeah. Well, and he's a great villain for this specific story because the theme of the story is really like the nature of belief.
Yeah.
Like what it means to believe in a thing and what that belief does to the world that's around you. And the thing is that Tea Time doesn't believe in anything.
No.
Everything he just takes as presented and is like, that must be it.
Yeah.
And so the whole point of the book is to show you why that's bad.
Yeah.
You shouldn't do that. That's not good. And so when it gets to the point where he's like, well, obviously we're just going to hijack the Tooth Fairy's operation.
Yeah.
Because that's how we're going to get all these kids not believe. Like there's no part of him that was like, I believe that would be bad or that this would be wrong because those are too abstract. He just sees the physical world and is like, this is it.
Like if he believes in anything, it's just a challenge. Like that. And a challenge isn't a belief.
Yeah.
Like that's the only thing that drives him really is the challenge of killing the Hogfather, the challenge of killing Death. Like they established that very early on, right? Like when he, when
you've actually worked out how to kill Death only in my own time, sir, as a hobby, but only in my own time.
I loved that whole interaction at the very beginning with the head of the Assassin's Guild.
Yeah, that was good.
And the what are they called? The auditors. The auditors, and then getting Tea Time in there. And the auditors at Tea Time as a villain, they're both very interesting, right? And I love Death's scorn for the auditors.
Yeah.
He doesn't really have much scorn for Tea Time. Tea Time he just treats pretty much like anybody else that dies, But with
he was the only person that said his name right.
Yeah.
When he dies, he goes, up you go, Tiadame, or however they say it. And he goes, you got it right. Like he was surprised.
Of course
he was like, yes.
And then he disappears. And that's
right.
it.
And then he just fades away.
Yeah. But the auditors, like the way that they are explained, like when Death gets into them at the end, just like
they run the universe.
They run the universe and they abhor life. They think that life is just like too much chaos.
It's this messy little accident And we're like, if we just clear that up,
Right.
we just clean all that up, everything will be perfect.
And so the root of that in their mind, or at least at this moment, is getting rid of the Hogfather.
Yeah.
Because if you get rid of the Hogfather, you get rid of like one of the core pillars of human belief. Yeah. And then everything will just fall apart from there.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and that was what made me like at the end when Susan was like, what really would have happened if I hadn't saved the Hogfather?
Yeah, because he keeps saying like the sun won't rise.
He was like, the sun would not have risen. And she's like, all right, don't play with it. It's been a long night. He's like, the sun would not have risen. And she's like, there is nothing in the world, there's no magic powerful enough to keep the sun from rising. He's like, I wish I was as clever as you. The sun would not have risen. And she's like, then what would have happened? And he said, merely a ball of gas would have illuminated the world.
Yeah.
And she was like...
So the world really wouldn't have ended.
Right. It's not that it would have ended, but it is the intangible things that give life meaning that would have just stopped.
Yeah. And he gets into that too. He talks about how we attribute like little lies to things to make things easier.
That was part of what I bookmarked. It was humans need fantasy to be human, to be the place where the falling angel meets the rising ape. Mm-hmm. And then Susan's like, tooth fairies, Hogfather, little. And he says, yes, as practice. You have to start out learning to believe the little lies. Susan says, so we can believe the big ones? Yes, justice, mercy, duty, that sort of thing. She says, they're not the same at all. And he says, you think so? Then take the universe and grind it down to the finest powder and sieve it through the finest sieve, and then show me one atom of justice, one molecule of mercy. And yet, Death waved a hand, and yet you act as if there is some ideal order in the world, as if there is some rightness in the universe by which it may be judged.
And he's right. I mean, these are all human concepts. Like,
yeah. Well, it's a thing that requires consciousness to grasp. Yeah. What it's getting at is that there's a reality that's more than physical. Yeah. There are things that are real. And even when they get a little further on, they're like, okay, we got to take the Hogfather back. But it's not the Castle of Bones that fell down earlier in the book. It's like this other place. And Susan goes, well, are these real mountains or are they just shadows? And Death goes, yes.
Yeah.
It's like, yes, they're both. That's the point.
Yeah.
Like the Hogfather is real because humans believe that he is real.
Right. And that's where you get into like the big plot of the book, right? Like you get rid of the Hogfather, which Tea Time does by utilizing children's teeth from the Tooth Fairy's operation to make them no longer believe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
There's some magic. I think in the book is described magic so old it's barely magic.
Yeah.
That if you have all these children's teeth, you get some sort of influence over their beliefs because they believe in the Tooth Fairy.
Yeah.
And so he like kidnaps a Tooth Fairy, sneaks into the Tooth Fairy's house, steals all these like hoarded children's teeth.
Yeah.
And using that is convincing kids not to believe in the Hogfather. And so as people begin to not believe, then the Hogfather ceases to exist.
And then the belief has to go somewhere.
Right.
And so then we start getting really silly things like the Oh God of hangovers.
The Veruca gnome.
The Veruca gnome. Dude. Oh, man. And the cheerfulness fairy, who ironically is not cheerful at all.
Very emotionally volatile and unstable.
Like she's only stable when other people are trying to cheer her up.
Yeah.
Thus the cheerfulness fairy.
Right.
You know?
Not the fairy that bestows cheerfulness.
Yeah.
Well, it explains it early in the book that fairy is not so much a creature but a job title.
Yeah.
Specifically, a fairy is someone that is made to take something or to give it. Yeah. And so the irony is that the cheerfulness fairy does not give cheer, she takes it.
Yeah.
Because most fairies take things.
Yeah, and then there's a whole cadre of tooth fairies.
Yeah, there's not just one.
Yeah, it's just people that are given lists of children and their addresses so they can go and collect the teeth under their pillows. Yeah. And then they go and take them somewhere.
So that brings me to my next favorite character.
Yeah.
The Tooth Fairy.
Oh my God, that was so cool.
So I bookmarked this. I wanted to read this part too.
Yeah, go ahead.
Basically, all this plot with Mr. Tea Time and these other criminals that he's hired. Medium Dave, Chicken Wire, Cat's Eye, Banjo.
Love them.
Mr. Brown.
Mr. Brown was the one that was
the
actually
locksmith.
picked. Yes.
Yeah. And then Sidney, the wizard.
Mm-hmm.
The dropout from the university.
Right.
Anyway, they break in, but there's just this locked door. And Tea Time is like, we have to get in there. And it's super hard to get in. They spend most of the book trying to get in and survive the Tooth Fairy's house. And they're all like, why are we getting it? Like, we did what we came to do. Let's go. But Tea Time is like, but there's a locked door. I want to know what's back there.
I want to know what's back there.
And it's like, but you did what you came to do. He goes, yeah, but look at the locked door. You don't care?
You don't care what's back there?
That there's something here. And so that goes back to him not having any beliefs. He doesn't believe, well, I did my job and I'll leave. He's just like, now there's this. Let's just react to the world in front of us without any conception of any abstract ideas like the future.
In a D&D campaign, he would be the rogue that refuses to leave a dungeon until
he'd just be the loot goblin. Yeah. But so then they finally get in the door.
Yeah.
And you find this like terrifically old thing in a bed. And I think it was Susan who was interacting with them. So it's described as, it looked like a small wizened monkey.
Yeah.
But with big, deep eyes under a brow overhanging like a balcony.
Only after it turned into a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah, it turned into a bunch of other stuff. And now it's this. It was like your stereotypical tooth fairy. Then it was a bunch of other things. Its hair was gray and lank. It struggled weakly in her grasp and wheezed. There's some interaction. And Susan says, you're a boogeyman, aren't you? It collapsed in a heap when she took her hand away. Not the, it said. What do you mean the, said Susan. The boogeyman, said the boogeyman. And she saw how rangy it was, how white and gray streaked its hair, how the skin was stretched over the bones. The first boogeyman? I do remember when the land was different. Ice, many times of ice. And the, what do you call them? The creature wheezed, the lands, the big lands, all different. Susan asked, you mean continents? She says, all different. The black sunken eyes glinted at her, and suddenly the thing reared up, bony arms waving. I was the dark in the cave. I was the shadow in the trees. You've heard about the primal scream? That was at me. I was, it folded up and started coughing. And when that thing, you know, that thing, all light and bright, lightning you could carry, hot, little sunshine. And then there was no more dark, just shadows. And then you made axes in the forest. Susan sits down on the bed and says, there's still plenty of boogeymen. And it says, hiding under beds, lurking in cupboards. But, it fought for breath, if you had seen me in the old days, when they came down into the deep caves to draw their hunting pictures, I could roar in their heads so that their stomachs dropped out of their bottoms. She says, all the old skills are dying out. And it says, oh, others came later. They never knew the first fine terror. All they knew was dark corners. I had been the dark. I was the first. And now I was no better than them. Frightening maids, curdling cream, hiding in the shadows at the stub of the year. And then one night I thought, why? What a good character.
Old gods do new jobs.
Gods do not die.
Yeah.
They hang on.
They hang on and they do something else if what they're doing is no longer needed.
Yeah.
You know.
But also just the nature of human belief is that you don't ever stop believing in the thing.
Yeah.
The thing just changes the form of the belief.
Yeah.
So it's not that, kids still believe in the Tooth Fairy. It's not that they stopped, the human race stopped believing in the first boogeyman.
Yeah.
The first boogeyman just, over time, became
else.
The Tooth Fairy.
Yeah.
It was like, what's that ever-present thing that sneaks around at night and takes things from us?
The Tooth Fairy.
It used to be your life and your peace of mind and your children. And now it's
just the teeth.
Your teeth. But it never went away. And that gets sort of mirrored in the transformations of the Hogfather after Susan saves him. She's looking at him and it's like this naked guy with blue swirl tattoos. Mm-hmm. And then some bird is off in the forest, distracts her. She looks away, she looks back, and now he's like this strong fur-clad hunter with a spear. Yeah. And she's like, whoa, okay, that was different. Then another sound. She looks away. She looks back, and now he's like this buff dude in like a white priestly robe.
And then she realizes he's all of those things at once.
Yeah,
he's not can't process all of those.
He's
things
not
at
changing.
once.
Her perspective is shifting, and so he's becoming what she is able to see.
Yeah, it's such an interesting idea that, like, you know, before anything else, the Hogfather was just a hog.
Yeah. But it was a special hog. It was a hog that you believed if you killed it, the sun came up.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just a hog until it was.
Mm-hmm. I think my favorite parts of this book were easily Death being Santa.
Yeah, I mean, that's just such a hilarious image.
My favorite parts, it was after the mall. It was after he was done with the mall. The mall was really good. Like,
the mall was very good.
I especially loved that interaction with, I think it was a little girl that wanted a sword, and so he gave her one.
Yeah.
And then, like,
you can't give her a sword.
Why not?
It's not safe. It's a sword. It's not meant to be safe.
But what if she hurts herself? She'll have learned a valuable lesson.
Right. He's like, it's educational. And then Albert like whispers something in his ear. He goes, okay. Boop. Now it's a wooden sword.
Yeah. Yeah. I think he gave her a bunch of other stuff too.
Yeah. It was like a castle and a bunch of like hundreds of little soldiers for the castle.
And then there was a bit where like one of the Night's Watch guards like went to it.
Yeah. It was Constable Visit and Corporal something.
Stibbins?
No, that's not what it was. Corporal Nibs?
Nibs?
Something like that. I can't remember. But Nibs was like the kind of spurned, bitter, you know, been doing this a long time. But then I love the addition of Constable Visit because it's very true to form reality, is that there are some people that kind of suck the fun out of Christmas.
Yeah.
With all the religion of it.
Yeah.
And I'm a faithful practicing Catholic.
Sure.
You know, I celebrate Advent, not Christmas. Like, it's not Christmas yet.
Right.
So I'm like, not all of our Christmas decorations are up because we're like, it's not time.
It's not time.
We've got a nativity scene set up, but like baby Jesus isn't in it because he hasn't been born yet. We put him there on Christmas morning before we open presents.
I love that.
So I'm not diminishing the religious aspect of the holiday of Christmas and the celebration of that, but when you're ruining other people's day because they're having fun decorating a tree and you're like, you know, it's not Christmas because Jesus was born. It's like, just shut up. Like, let people have their fun.
Yeah.
You're not helping.
You celebrate it your way.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and if your goal is to get people to see your point of view, being a dick about it
never works.
Never works.
Never.
You know? But I liked him because he was just like, no, this is, you know, he was like every complaint that sort of the conservative evangelical church would have about the modern day Christmas.
Yeah.
Constable Stibbins has. He goes, well, I think it's all very flashy and commercialized. It's obviously bad for the soul.
Yeah.
And the corporal's just like, what do you guys do? And he goes, we get together for prayer and fasting.
Yeah.
So they just don't eat. And he's like, you don't have anything like food? He goes, no, it's fasting. We don't eat anything.
We don't eat.
He's like, do you guys give presents? He goes, you know, well, there's, you know, new Bible. They don't say Bible. It's whatever the word. It's like Book of OC or something.
Something like that.
You know, there's
Bible.
Yeah, there's those books for the kids. You know, we get them those, which what a terrible gift for a kid.
For a kid. Who wants a Bible as a kid?
There was a funny part where it was like, and he says, you know, sometimes they even have illustrations. And the narration was like, he said in the way that someone says when admitting like a guilty pleasure, as if it having illustrations was this sort of like luxurious but kind of scandalous thing to have in your Bible. It's very Quaker.
And one of my favorite scenes was after that. It was when, so there was this old man in his hovel, and there was this lord, no, a king. It was a king. I don't know if they named the king, but there was this king that brought him all of this food. And he was like, this is too much. He's like, should you be giving me this? And then like the king is like, what do you mean? I've brought you all of this food. Why aren't you grateful?
No gratitude.
No gratitude. And well, I mean, because it's one of those things where, and they touch on this, like the classist themes of Christmas.
Yeah. Well, in the mall, Mr. Crumley, the guy who runs the mall,
mall,
sees Death giving away these things, and he goes, you can't give that
my
away.
merchandise away.
Well, and when they calls the cops, there's like, all right, so you got the Hogfather in there.
Yeah.
Thought he did that every year. And he goes, no, it's the fake Hogfather. He goes, yeah, I always thought it was a fake Hogfather. And he goes, no, it's not the Hogfather we hired. It's some other guy. And he goes, so it's the wrong imposter, not the right imposter. He goes, exactly.
Exactly.
And he's just like,
he's
okay.
giving away my stuff.
And he's like, he's giving stuff away. And he goes, okay. But he's not taking anything. He's like, taking things, obviously a crime. Giving things, that's a bit tougher.
Yeah.
Is it yours? He's like, oh, I get it. He's giving away your stuff. And he was like, as far as I could tell, it's not my stuff.
Yeah.
And he was just like, I'm very confused about what you want me to do here.
Yeah.
Like a guy busted in.
How dare you be charitable in my place of commerce?
Well, and that was the thing he gets to. He goes, but this is a shop. This isn't a place where you give things away. If you're giving things away, nobody's going to buy anything. And this is a place of purchase.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay. So you want me to go in there and arrest that guy? And he's like, yeah. And he goes, you want me to arrest Hogfather? Yeah. On Hogs Watch Night?
Hogs Watch Night?
Yeah. In your shop. That's right. In front of all those kids. And he goes, yeah. Wait. You think that'll look bad? And he goes, it's hard to see how it's going to look good.
Anyways, we get to this bit, right? We get to this poor old man in his poor dilapidated house being given a feast from a king.
Yeah.
Right? And it's all of the leftover stuff that the king
He didn't go out of his way for this stuff.
But for this guy, this is like more extravagance than he believes he deserves, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which was touched on a little bit in another scene with Death as the Hogfather. He was talking to Albert, right? Like he was going to some poor places and giving them just like poor stuff.
Yeah.
And he's like, wait, I'm confused. Why is it I'm not giving these kids everything they asked for when I've been going to all of these much more extravagant houses and I have been giving the kids everything they asked for.
And more.
And more. And Albert was like, well, here's the thing. If you give poor kids everything they ask for, they're not going to be poor anymore. And Death, like, he has a lot of trouble comprehending why that matters.
I have two things to say about that. The first would be that again touches on sort of the way belief works.
Yeah.
Is that the rich kids believe they deserve everything they get.
Yeah.
And so then when they get it, they go, that checks out. That is in line with my beliefs. And since what he's trying to do here is reinforce belief in the Hogfather, that's kind of what you need to do.
Right.
The poor kids usually, and this is depressing and sad, but they usually don't believe
that they're going to get everything they want.
That they deserve everything that they get.
And then there's that.
And so it's like, well, if you give them everything, that alters their belief system.
Right.
And that's not what we want right now.
Yeah.
What we want is to reinforce their belief system.
Cut to this old man. He doesn't believe he deserves everything that this king is giving him.
So despite how great it is, he's resisting. Yeah. He's like, hang on. And that's the weird thing about belief is if you're like, I mean, this is something that happens to people a lot in therapy is they don't believe that they deserve to feel good. And so they end up feeling really bad. And you go to therapy to be convinced like, no, it's okay to feel good.
But that's what I love about Death as the Hogfather coming in and intruding, right? He's like, he comes in here and the king's like, what's going on here? Whoever you are, this is some fine old Hogs Watch charity. And that's like, no, it's not. What? How dare you? Were you here last month? Will you be here next week? No. But tonight you wanted to feel all warm inside. Tonight you will want them to say, what a good king he is. Which I think is a really great commentary on folks that volunteer at the soup kitchen or the homeless shelter, but only
on Thanksgiving.
Only on Thanksgiving. Only on Christmas. Only on New Year's Day.
Yeah.
They don't need you then. There's lots of other people that are going to come then. They need you every other night.
Yeah. So the other thing I was going to say, I can't remember now which saint it was. And so when I don't know, I always just say it was St. Augustine. So I'm going to say St. Augustine said this, that God gave the rich to the poor so that they may live. and God gave the poor to the rich so that they may not die. And so the point was just like, the rich are expected, like you belong to the poor people around you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, your job is to serve them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's so that they don't die, because they're not as secure as you. Now, the poor belong to the rich in that they are the means for them to exercise charity.
They're the reason they're rich at all.
Well, and it's your whole reason for having everything is so that you can give it away, so that you can go to heaven. Because otherwise, you're not going to heaven. And so it's like you have to have, in a sense, you have to have poor people so that rich people can give stuff to them and go, look, I'm a good person. And the poor people can go, thank you. And then they're also good people.
No, but I love this part. The king's like, whatever it is, it's more than he's got, and all we've had from him is ingratitude. And Death is like, yes, that does spoil it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Go away. And then he does.
Yeah.
He goes away.
Well, could you imagine if every time like a homeless person was rude to a shelter employee, that the employee just quit?
Yeah.
It's like, they're going to be rude to you, man.
Of course
like,
they are.
They're tired.
They've got
They're
nothing.
hungry. They're embittered by a lot of things.
They've got to share a room with like 24 other people that
like
are also bitter and angry.
Yeah, it's tough. It's stressful. They're going to snap at you. They're going to get short with you. Okay. But you don't do, and that's what Death is driving at here, you don't do the charitable act for the notoriety of charity.
Yeah.
You do it because it's the right thing to do. And that's why you don't wait until it's just Hogs Watch Night. Now, if you go a little extra on Hogs Watch Night, great. The more the merrier. And it's better to do it one night a year than never.
Yeah.
But don't go around flaunting it then. Be like, I volunteer at the soup kitchen. It's like, you volunteered one time at the soup kitchen. Yeah. You don't volunteer, right? You don't get to use the habitual verb when you do it one time.
Yeah, no. I one time helped out at the homeless shelter, and it was very eye-opening, but I have not done it again since then.
Yeah.
You know?
I have volunteered.
I have.
I do not volunteer.
I do not actively do that, no. The other bit that I really enjoyed with Death, like having to try to reinforce this belief that the Hogfather exists and Hogs Watch Night isn't bogus, was the bit with the match girl.
The match girl.
Yeah, there was this girl that was dying in the snow.
Yeah.
And Albert was like, you gotta leave her. You gotta let her die. And Death was like, no.
Yeah, why?
No, not tonight. I'm not doing it tonight. And Albert's like, no, you've got to let her die. And Death's like, why? And he's like, because if you've got one girl, poor, alone, dying in the snow on Hogs Watch Night, which happens every year, it reinforces for everyone else how fortunate they are that they aren't the match girl.
Yeah.
And Death's like, screw that. No. Tonight of all nights, no. There will be no Death tonight. I am not Death tonight. I am the Hogfather. And so then he uses his power to, for probably the only time in ever, to let someone live. And I really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
And Albert was like, no, but this is not going to help with the reinforcing belief thing. And Death's like, I don't care. No.
The struggle is that in a way they're both right, because it just sucks.
Yeah.
To be like, somebody died on Christmas.
Yeah.
Like that just feels bad.
It does.
It just feels icky inside. Like you hear that, like if you hear someone's grandma died, you're like, oh, that's so sad. I'm sorry for your loss. If you hear someone's grandma died on Christmas, you're like, oh, are you okay?
Man.
Like, did you get to see her?
Yeah.
Was it painful? Like, are you doing okay? Do you need help? Do you need a week off of work? Like, what do you need?
You're right.
There's something more to it. But Albert has a point in that, kind of using this all sort of revolves around the theme of poverty. What if nothing horrible ever happened to poor people?
Right.
Well, then why would you need to help them?
Right.
Everybody would be like, what do you mean you need help? You're fine. You're getting along just like everybody else. And it's like, no, a little girl died last night outside because we don't have enough around here. Then people go, oh, shit.
We should probably help the poor.
That feels bad. We should stop little girls from dying in the street now.
And that's exactly what Death does.
Yeah.
He's like, I have the power to let her live tonight of all nights.
Yeah.
I am going to do that.
I think that's sort of that's an example of life rubbing off on death.
Yeah.
First of all, because he literally chooses life over death, and he is death personified.
Yeah.
So that's like, that shouldn't happen.
Well,
theoretically, you should be like, yeah, she should die.
Well, the thing is, after he does that, that is when Susan starts to slip into the role of death a little bit more for the rest of the story, because the universe
is like, we need to correct,
and she can feel it too, right? Because she like speaks with death's voice a little bit more, because like she's always been able to speak with death's voice, but when she chooses, but after he does that, then she's kind of like,
it gets harder to control.
And
it just sort of happens.
She's like, he's slipping into the role too much. I can feel myself slipping into his role right now, because that's what she did in one of the other stories. There was I didn't read it, but there was one of the stories revolving around Death and Susan where he went on vacation, and so she had to be Death until he was done being on vacation. And so this isn't new to her. She can feel what's happening, and it's not good.
It's such an interesting scene because it's morally gray depending on the scale you're looking at it in. You know, like on an individual scale, you're like, it's always right to save that little girl.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. Always. Like move up to the neighborhood level. It's always right to save that little girl. City level. It's always right to save that little girl. But you get up to the point where it's like humanity.
Yeah.
Is it better? Does it inspire more people to kind action and then positively impact more lives if one person suffers? I don't know. That's the kind of thing it takes the personification of universal forces to figure out. And I am not that.
Right.
But like the argument can be made, and there's logic on both sides. So it gets tricky when you're in that position of power and you have the responsibility that death has of like, I have to maintain everything.
Yeah.
I can't be doing personal favor for it, because otherwise it'd be like every sob story comes through, I'm going to let him live. That can't happen.
No.
You know? So it's like, well, how do you choose? Which sob story is just sad enough?
But that's the thing with death, though, right? Like, the rest of the time, like, he's so disconnected from life.
Yeah.
It's like an autistic person trying to understand everyone around them.
Right.
You know, like, he just doesn't, like, there's nuances to life that he just doesn't get.
Yeah.
Which is a good thing, because when people die and he's there with them, it's not so shocking. It's not so horrible, because he's not behaving like it is.
Yeah. It's the death scene with Ernie the carter.
Yeah. The one that was carting the teeth.
Yeah. I loved that scene. That was very good.
Yeah.
Because he just stands up and he at first obviously has no idea
what just happened.
That he's dead. He's just like, that guy could have killed me. Like, the irony is thick. I love it. And even the way it describes it, it doesn't give you the spiel that death gives people. You know, he's just like, oh man, I think I'm gonna lose my job. He goes, well, on that front, I have some good news for you.
I have some good news for you.
Then again, I have some bad news. And so then it's like, and then death explained to him what had happened. And Ernie's just like, okay, well, I guess I'm dead then. And it was like, Ernie didn't ask a lot of questions, mainly because things tend to make sense when a 7-foot-tall skeleton is saying them to you. And you go, uh-huh. Yeah. If a 7-foot-tall skeleton's like, I think you're dead, you go, I think I am too.
It was so good. I really enjoyed it. And I really enjoyed how death kind of saved the day, right? Like, he did a few different things. So the first thing he did was get Susan involved.
Indirectly. He couldn't. A recurring line is, there are rules, you know.
Yeah.
So we don't know what those rules are, but we can infer. One of those rules is you cannot directly tell humans what they need to do or what's going on.
Right.
You can't just be like, hey, if you don't help me save the Hogfather, life will cease to have meaning.
Yeah.
You know? So he has to just like coincidentally drop by doing Hogfather things while she's in the nursery where the presents go. And then just be like, don't ask any questions. When you tell the lady that loves to look into things, don't ask any questions, and then refuse to answer any of her questions, she's going to go find answers to those questions.
The other thing he does, and this is him skirting the rules, right? Because he meets Hex at the university.
Yeah.
Hex isn't a person.
Right.
So he can directly tell Hex what he wants.
Yeah.
Which is, believe in the Hogfather.
Yes.
And so then Hex does.
Hex is like, got it, done.
Then the final thing he does, and this does break the rules, which the auditors call him out on, but he's like, you broke the rules.
Right. I get to break them because you did it first.
Yeah. Which was taking Susan exactly where she needed to be to save the Hog.
Yeah.
You know?
just I love that his horse's name is Binky. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
I just imagine that like Susan as a little girl named it, and he was just like, love that, keeping it.
Binky.
It's Binky now.
The thing I think was interesting about like saving the Hogfather never speaks.
Yeah.
Like he's there, and like you get a little bit of personification when like he pulls the fake beard out of the sleigh. And he looks at
there's
Death a little
personality
confused.
to him. Yeah.
Yeah, like he's a little confused about the beard, and Death's like,
that's mine.
That's mine.
Sorry. That is true. They never, but there's something to the way traditions evolve, you know, because this starts with the solstice ritual of slaying a pig so that the world can be reborn,
right,
all the way up to Santa Claus, basically, and that transformation and how it has become what it has become and why is very difficult, if not impossible, to articulate.
Mm-hmm.
So I think him not speaking is part of that, where it's like, but what do you, like, tell me what you mean. And it's like, I can't. That's not how this works. Like, it's so deeply subconscious and symbolic that there aren't words for the thing that it is.
Yeah. It's why I think in a lot of fiction, when characters get the opportunity to meet God, you never actually see that interaction. Yeah. You know, like God never actually speaks to you, because it's like, what could you possibly, as a human being writing that scene?
What arrogant author is be like, I know what God would say.
Right.
Like, no, you don't.
Now, that said, I do enjoy fiction where God is a character and God has shit to say. Like Bruce Almighty.
Well, yeah, I was going to say Bruce Almighty and Evan Almighty, both great movies.
But I understand why more often than not, God doesn't say anything. Yeah. And so in that way, it is pretty fitting that in this book about the Hogfather doesn't actually have anything to say. Mm-hmm. And I think because if he did, it would just be disappointing. Like, it wouldn't be what you want it to be in this book about Santa Claus. Right. You know? Like, there's nothing that Santa could say that would meet your expectations other than ho, ho, ho.
That reminded me of one of the other lines I really liked in the book. I don't remember exactly where it was, but it was in the Unseen University at some point. And Ridcully was asking about mistletoe or whatever. But prior to the scene, it was describing, like, you know, there's this building at the university. Nobody remembers why it was called that. Nobody remembers exactly what the building was for. They do this weird tradition. Nobody remembers why they do that. But then the last line of the paragraph is like, but if you just stop doing traditions because you didn't understand them, you're no better than a foreigner. And it was just like, well, I guess you're right. Yeah. It's phrased weirdly. Being a foreigner is not inherently bad, but
foreigners don't do things that you would do.
It's true that if you choose not to participate in your own culture, just because you don't understand it, then how much of that is really your culture? Like, that's not you then. Now you're not part of that group. If you grew up in a town where everybody's like, we go to the parade.
You don't go to the parade.
That's what we do. Yeah. We're the town that's known for the parade. We do the parade. Yeah. And then you don't go to the parade. It's like, well, are you really a part of this town? Yeah. Like, you're intentionally pulling yourself out of it.
I feel that way sometimes because I'm not a sports guy at all.
I can't. I've tried so hard to be a sports guy. Yeah. I just can't be interested.
As a result, and you recognize this too then, as a result, there's a significant portion of the culture of our town that we just can't participate in because we're not sports guys.
Did you guys watch the game last night? I did.
Nope.
Didn't watch it, didn't listen, didn't look up highlights. I don't care. Who did we play? I don't know.
Do people think that you're a sports guy when they don't know
you? Yes.
Nobody ever pegs me as a sports guy.
I think part of it is I do work at the university. Yeah. So they just assume that I'm more plugged in.
Yeah. So getting back to the book. What, I'm curious what you have to say about this. What narrative purpose do you think Bilious, the god of hangovers, serves? Because he's pretty prominent throughout. Yeah. And he's very funny. But like taking the comedy out of it because it's honestly it's tragic and he shouldn't exist.
Well, one, I think it illustrates the power of human belief.
Mm-hmm.
To believe in a thing means that it exists, right? But that's also the Veruca gnome and the monster that eats the
Veruca gnome
socks.
is dreadful. The Veruca gnome is embarrassed.
He is ashamed to be who he is.
Yeah. Because I looked up what a Veruca was, and I was like, oh, God, no. I would be embarrassed, too.
He's like, I got to give you this.
I'm going to give you a Veruca. I'm sorry.
And it's like, stop. No. He's got a bag full of them.
What does that even look like?
I don't want to know. I don't want to know. But I think
it's
maybe...
like saying, oh, here's a bag of buttholes. What is that?
Yeah. I think maybe it is something like a personification of the things that we take for granted, the implications of our belief that really don't get discussed.
Right.
And I think that's sort of what Death is touching at the end, when he was like, you know, somewhere out there in the universe, there are two galaxies that have been colliding for 2 million years, and you think a bed is like a normal thing.
Yeah.
Like 99% of existence is unsuitable to human life. And you've got the nerve to say this street lamp is normal. No, it is not. In all of existence, there are only however many streetlights are on the planet. There are no others anywhere else ever.
They only exist because you made them.
They have not existed in the past. They will not exist in the future. They are only right here, right now, and there's only so many of them.
Yeah.
But we're like, yeah, that's totally normal. Those are the things that we take for granted. And so that would be something like the God of Hangover. We go, well, of course there's a God of wine. That just checks out. But we take for granted that, well, what does drinking wine give you? It gives you a hangover. Yeah. Who's dealing with that? If there's a personification that manages every facet of the universe, why wouldn't there be one that does that? Well, there wasn't, because we took it for granted until Ridcully's like, well, what if there was?
Because now we had all of this leftover belief power that needed to be filled up.
Yeah.
Which is why I also love the glingle, glingle, glingle fairy at the end. He was just like, hey, so I exist, and I was doing this the whole time.
I've been doing it the whole time. That's my job. I give you the little sound effect.
The little glingle,
little
glingle,
sound
glingle.
effect fairy. Yeah. But that's the belief vacuum and how it just like spawns these other things.
What was the thing that kept stealing people's socks?
I don't remember what it was called.
It was funny, though.
It was just a little sock dude. Yeah. But yeah, that just speaks to like, people have to believe in something.
Yeah.
It's not optional. And if you're like, I mean, unless you're an actual psychopath like Tea Time.
Yeah.
He believes in nothing.
Yeah, because even when you think that you're above believing in something, even then there's still a part of your mind that even if you acknowledge it's not rational, that you do believe like this thing.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, and almost by definition, most beliefs are irrational.
Sure.
But that doesn't mean they're not real. So the way I thought, I didn't think about this until after reading this book, but like Santa Claus in real life does exist in a real way, explicitly and exclusively because children believe in him.
Mm-hmm.
So like there is a guy dressed up as Santa Claus who is a fake character that will listen to what kids want for Christmas only because the kids say that guy should be there. There's no logical reason for it. The kid just goes, there's a guy that goes to the mall and I sit on his lap, I tell him, and then on Christmas he brings me stuff. And it's like, why do you think that? Well, you told me that. Okay. Why do you think that? Well, I thought it because my dad told me that. Well, why did your dad think that? Well, because his dad told him that. So because the kids say there ought to be a guy here who's fat, with a beard, in a red and white suit,
and wants
who
to
gives
give
me
you
gifts.
what you want.
Right. Because I'm a good boy.
That's right.
That means that guy's there.
Yeah.
They have literally created that situation through belief.
Yeah. I wonder how that, I mean, I'm sure I could have looked it up, or can look it up, like how that came about, how that started. What I think happened is you have a lot of parents that do want to give their kids gifts, but aren't at all times in a position to do so.
Yeah.
And so Santa's a scapegoat. I didn't give you this stuff. Santa did.
Yeah. Well,
you can't expect
don't ask me. I can't do that.
Don't ask me to get you all of this stuff because I can't and I won't. He can though. And it's, it's really a lie. It's I can once a year, maybe.
Yeah.
And I say Santa does it.
So G.K. Chesterton, he did a column that was just like on the subject of Santa Claus.
Yeah.
G.K. Chesterton was a famous Catholic convert, and people were terrified when he joined the Catholic Church because he was this real boisterous, funny guy, and
says whatever's on his mind.
Yeah, well, and Catholics specifically were afraid that he was. They were like, "Oh no, this is terrible news that he's joined the Catholic Church," because they thought he was just going to turn into this like sullen, depressed guy.
Oh.
And then everybody would be like, and now no one's going to join the Catholic Church. They'd be like, no, they broke G.K. Chesterton. He used to be great. Now he sucks.
Okay.
But he stayed super funny and awesome. So it was okay. There's plenty of bitter Catholic intellectuals. We didn't need more of that.
I love what it says about Catholics, what they think is going to happen to someone that's a comedian that joins a Catholic Church.
Well, they're just like, oh no. He's going to be like depressed now, and they're going to blame us.
Yeah.
It's going to be our fault. And if he had, it would have been.
Anyways, go ahead. The column.
But so he writes this really cool piece about Santa Claus where he's like, this mystery of Santa Claus, contrary to like most of the people that I grew up with, Santa, as they grew older, seemed to get smaller and smaller and eventually just vanish. And now he's just a fable they tell their kids. But Santa Claus, for me, got bigger as I got older. And the way he describes it is that, when I was little, and I was real little, I would go to bed on Christmas Eve, and I'd wake up in the morning, and there was a stocking that I didn't hang, full of toys that my parents did not purchase, that I did not ask for, there. And I just got them.
Yeah.
For nothing.
Yeah.
And then the next year, it's like, well, I'll put up the stocking. But the presents still came. No, I was like, I took that part of the mystery away. I'll hang that stocking up. Now I know how that stocking got there. Where did those toys come from?
Yeah.
I don't know. And then so he's like, as I got older, it stopped being, well, where did the stocking come from? Where did the toys come from? Where did the bed that the stocking is on come from? Where did that fireplace come from? Where did the trees for the lumber in the fire come from? And so he's like, as it got bigger and bigger, now I'm realizing that every day that I am alive, I am given a gift from a person I do not know, but that knows me, who's giving me everything I could ever want for no reason at all, other than he thinks I deserve it. And so his point is that Santa Claus for kids is really just like a small personification of like Christian charity or grace, where it's like God will give you good things. And sometimes you're going to be like, why did I get that? It doesn't matter. Just say thanks. Like, it doesn't matter where it came from. It doesn't matter why you got it. What matters is you were a good boy, and good boys get rewards. That's what matters.
Yeah.
And where did it come from? The guy who knows when you're asleep, who knows when you're awake, he knows if you've been good or bad.
God.
Right.
Yeah.
He's just like, Santa is just a very childish way to explain God just gives you nice things sometimes because it's nice to give you them.
Yeah.
And that's it. It's just because he's nice.
So you've told me this before, and I couldn't remember exactly what you said. And so I was trying to indirectly get you on this track, and I have succeeded. That's the end of the episode, guys. We did
it. Oh, was it the G.K. Chesterton?
Yeah, I couldn't remember what it was
it was so
who
good.
You were talking about or what exactly it was, but I remember you telling me this. Before we go, I want to know, and I will answer this question as well. What are you getting your family for Christmas?
Ooh. Victor and Joan are getting mostly toys.
Right.
Victor has been very interested in cleaning.
Really?
Stuff. Yeah, he'll love to, if you leave the laundry room door open, he'll come out with the dust mop, he'll come out with the broom. If he could move the vacuum, he'd be moving that. Like I guess he sees Mary cleaning and he's just like, that looks fun. That. Yeah, he's emulating that behavior. So we got him like a little toy vacuum, but it works.
Nice.
So he's actually going to be vacuuming.
Nice.
We're like, put this kid to work. This will be great.
Cool.
Joan is a month and a half old. So, she's getting some onesie, some clothes, some teething toy, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Mary, I got like exclusively books.
Yeah.
And then I think a pair of earrings and a dress.
Nice. So I don't think I told you this. A couple months ago, my dog ate my retainer.
Oh no.
Yeah. So that was $500. So unfortunately, I really don't have much of a Christmas fund.
Oh no.
So, but I did get my wife one thing. I put a lot of thought into it, and she's not going to listen to this at all on Christmas Eve. So
there we go.
I'm not
all
concerned
right.
about telling you. I got her a digital picture frame, and I've been reaching out to all of her friends, like all of her favorite people, like, hey, give me photos that you think she would love.
That is a great idea.
And I've been adding those to the frame. So that way, you know, like, I feel like when she initially opens it, she's going to be like, oh, cool, a frame. But then I'm going to be like, no.
Turn it on.
Turn it on. Have a look at this frame.
Yeah, and if it's preloaded with all these pictures, that'd be cool.
I've preloaded quite a few, but I'm not done yet. And I've told her, like, hey, you need to get out of the house today. Like, when I got home, I was like, hey, you need to get out of the house because I'm not done with your gift yet.
That'll be cool.
And then when I'm done with that, I'm thinking I'm going to go to the mall and get it gift wrapped because I don't do that anymore. I just have mall people gift wrap it for me.
Really?
Yeah, because they always do it so much better than me.
That's true.
And also, like, especially this year, if I'm only getting one thing wrapped, I don't
you don't want to buy a roll of wrapping paper.
No.
That's a whole roll for one present. Yeah, that's true. That is silly.
And then I think I'm going to go to, like, Five Below to get some stocking stuffers.
I got Mary's stocking stuffers from Clover's.
Okay.
So they got a lot of like just little earrings for like $18 and necklaces, bracelets. She likes incense, little thing of incense, perfume.
Nice.
Like it's all just like hippie, natural, organic stuff. Cool. And so I'm just like, let me just go get a bunch of random little things that she likes.
All right, let's hear from you guys. Leave it in the comments. YouTube, Spotify, wherever, if you're able to leave comments. What are you getting the people in your life for Christmas?
And if it's books, I want title and author.
Merry Christmas, you all.
Merry Christmas.
And a Happy New Year. The next time you hear from us, Zach and I will be discussing the Morte Arthur 5.
Back to it.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.